Ethan sat on the stone bench in my yard, wearing a perfectly tailored black suit, completely out of place among the firewood and pig pens. He held a document between his fingers. His tone was as calm as if discussing an ordinary deal.
Chloe, let's break up. I'm the president of Sterling Enterprises. I stayed here after losing my memory in a car accident 3 years ago. Now it's time for me to go back.
The ladle in my hand paused over the pig feed. I didn't question him or ask him to stay. For 3 years, he'd fed pigs, chopped wood, and worked the fields with me. The warmth of ordinary life in his eyes had been real, but the coldness in his eyes now was just as real. Fine, I answered. My voice held no emotion. Ethan seemed surprised I'd agreed so readily. After a moment, he handed me a silver suitcase.
This is compensation. An AI robot butler that can manage the farm for you. The password is your birthday.
With that, he turned and got into the waiting luxury car. When the window rolled down, he left me with one last word.
Take care.
After the car disappeared at the village entrance, I opened the suitcase, but there was no robot butler inside. A tall man was tied up inside instead, dressed in black from head to toe. His light silver hair was messily stuck to his temples.
His eyes were full of menace.
When he saw me open the case, he struggled to curse me out. I froze for a moment, then it clicked. Ethan was probably worried I'd be unsafe alone, so he'd sent me a bodyguard in a different package. The packaging was just really strange. The man looked strong, so he was probably good at hard work. I untied the ropes around him and casually said, "You'll stay here and help me from now on. Room and board included." He didn't say a word. He only surveyed the farm warily. That night, feeling inspired, I found some stationery and wrote to Ethan, "Thanks for the bodyguard you sent me. He's in great shape and he looks like a hard worker. We're planning to get married. He says he'll do a backflip at the ceremony. Can you come witness it?" The letter hadn't even been out until midnight when a sharp screech of brakes came from the gate. Ethan burst through the door, his white shirt damp with night dew. His usually cool face was filled with urgency. He clutched the letter I'd written, sounding close to losing it.
Chloe, I didn't put anyone in that suitcase. That isn't the bodyguard I sent you.
I looked at his tense expression, then at the silent man standing in the corner. A doubt stirred in me. Had I mistaken him for someone else? After Ethan's car disappeared down the road, I was alone in the yard. The wind carried the scent of the rice fields. I couldn't help reliving what happened during his amnesia. Last winter, my pet pig, who'd just had piglets, was stolen in the night. I crouched by the pen, crying helplessly. Ethan wrapped himself in the quilted coat I'd sewn and rushed into the freezing night without a word. He didn't search nearby like an ordinary farmer. Instead, he called on resources I knew nothing about. He pulled surveillance footage from every road in town and even stirred up the local kingpin. Together, they searched the woods and abandoned factories. We spent the whole night at it. At last, in the pig thief's woodshed in the next village, he brought the shivering piglet back in his arms. His fingertips were bright red from the cold. He could barely hold the piglet, yet he smiled and tucked the warm little pig into my arms, gently soothing me.
As long as I'm here, no one will ever steal from you again.
But the Ethan standing before me now was distant, like a polished business executive. There wasn't a trace of his old warmth in his eyes. It was as if the man who spent 3 years feeding pigs and harvesting rice by my side was only a brief illusion. Before he left, he said he had to go back and handle the business battle between Sterling Enterprises and the Sinclair clan. It was a matter of life or death for the company. His tone was firm, leaving no room for argument. All I could think about was the coming harvest. I couldn't possibly manage our few acres of rice alone. Without thinking, I looked after him and hoped, "Could you come back for the harvest? You used to work so fast. One person could do the work of half a village." The moment those words left my mouth, Sophia, the assistant who'd come with him, frowned deeply. Her tone was full of blame and disapproval.
"Miss Hayes, you really should know better. Mr. Sterling is going back to handle a matter of life and death. How could he put off that for something as trivial as harvesting rice? Can't you be a little more considerate of Mr. Sterling's situation?"
I didn't answer Sophia. I just stared at the empty village entrance, my heart filled with doubt. All that time together, all that genuine care, all that companionship and protection through freezing nights, could all of it really be worth nothing in the face of cold business interests? I don't understand his business battles. I only know that the man he used to be treated even my little concerns like top priority. The day after Ethan left, Sophia showed up with a separation agreement. Its terms were blunt and cold. The gist was simple: we'd leave each other alone. It also came with a bank card, with enough money to renovate the whole farm. Ethan's idea of compensation. I held the neatly printed agreement and sat on Ethan's usual stone bench. I couldn't say I was sad. I was simply left feeling absurd. For 3 years, he'd taught me to fix tools and figure the harvest. He planted with me in spring, and helped me harvest rice in fall. When we watched the stars from the yard, he said he'd grow rice with me for life, and live a quiet life. But after he got his memory back, everything changed. It was as if he'd shut off all his feelings, He ended it just like that, without leaving behind a trace of regret. I wasn't going to cling to him, and I wouldn't demean myself. I took a deep breath and picked up the pen. But my fingertips trembled not because I couldn't let go, but because I couldn't accept that all that sincerity had earned me nothing but a flimsy piece of paper. The moment I put pen to paper, a warm hand gently caught my wrist. I turned around and saw Ethan Sterling. I had no idea when he'd arrived. He was standing behind me. The faint scent of cedar lingered in my nose, familiar, yet strange.
Careful, don't cut yourself.
His voice was soft, with a hint of something hard to read. I yanked my hand back and handed him the signed agreement. My tone was flat. That's it. We're even now. Ethan silently put the agreement in his briefcase. Sophia and several men prepared to leave. As they turned, they knocked over the yard's fence. They also trampled the seedlings I'd just planted. I frowned, heartbroken. Ethan glanced at the mess on the ground and left me with one sentence.
I'll have someone fix the fence, and leave an AI robot butler to take care of you.
Then, he got into his car without looking back. The luxury car drove off in a cloud of dust, leaving only the broken fence and withered seedlings, and a feeling I couldn't put into words. After Ethan left, I locked myself away all morning. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got at his coldness, his snobby assistant, and my own foolishness. I'd mistaken his temporary kindness for real love. It wasn't until evening, when it was time to feed the pigs, that I went to the storage room for feed. The moment I opened the door, I saw a huge suitcase in the corner. Something inside even seemed to move. My heart skipped a beat. I remembered Ethan mentioning an AI robot butler. Then I remembered Ethan had said he was leaving me an AI robot butler. It suddenly all made sense. Could this be the butler he meant? But it looked way too real. It even had body heat, and its eyes were full of wariness. It was muscular and handsome. Nothing like an emotionless robot. Ethan really spared no expense. Even his AI models were so well built. I stepped closer and cautiously poked his arm. It was firm and springy, more lifelike than any doll I'd ever felt. I was completely incredulous. He stared at me for a long moment, his eyes filled with confusion and suspicion. I assumed his startup programming was still being tested and didn't think much of it. But the more I thought about it, the stranger it seemed. Why would an AI robot butler be delivered tied up in a suitcase? I set the pot of porridge on the stove, grabbed my keys, and drove toward town after him. I spotted Ethan's convoy in the distance. I hit the gas and caught up. I rolled down the window and called out, "Ethan, the one in that suitcase, is he really the robot butler you mentioned? Is he really mine? Can I use him however I want?" Ethan's car stopped for a moment. The window rolled down, revealing a face cold as ice. He didn't even glance at me. He just tossed out,
"Handle it yourself."
Then he signaled the driver, and the black sedan sped off. Exhaust splashed all over my window, making me frown. I gripped the wheel. Whatever hope I had left died instantly. Fine. He could play the big shot CEO, but I wasn't about to chase after him. Knowing when to walk away was the last of my dignity and a way to save his. I sighed. I wasn't even angry, at least he was here with me. As long as he could work, that was good enough. I turned back. Just as I entered the farmyard, a commotion erupted from the pig pen. I ran over. I saw the robot tiptoeing toward the pig pen, his eyes fixed on the pregnant sow. He looked ravenous, ready to pounce. "What are you doing? You can't touch that pig." I hurried over to stop him. He turned around, his face pale as paper, his voice so hoarse I could barely hear him.
"I haven't eaten in 3 days.
I froze. I was baffled. Could a robot get hungry and eat human food, too? I quickly stopped him. Only then did I see his lips were cracked and bleeding. His whole body was trembling. Clearly, he'd gone days without food or water. When he saw me stop him, his eyes suddenly reddened, and he shouted,
"That bastard, Ethan Sterling, locked me up for half a month then dumped me in this dump."
My heart skipped a beat. Was this robot malfunctioning? But I didn't ask. I brought the porridge I'd just cooked from the kitchen, then poached 2 eggs. "Eat something. Whatever your grudge, eat first. Don't cause trouble on my farm." The man wolfed down the porridge and eggs until some color returned to his face. He wiped his mouth. "State your name."
"I'm Lucas Shaw. I'm heir to the Shaw Blackwind gang. Ethan Sterling wants to take over my family's empire. He had me held captive. I never expected him to dump me here. When I get back, I'll tear him apart."
My hand holding the bowl froze. Oh no, I thought. This robot's system must have crashed. But looking at his solid build, I didn't argue. I was afraid he'd punch me, so I decided to play along. I nodded perfunctorily. "Fine. Getting revenge is your business. Just don't cause trouble on my farm. I still have crops to grow and pigs to feed. I don't have time for your nonsense." Seeing how calm I was, he launched into a long-winded account of how Ethan Sterling had outsmarted him, even describing exactly when they'd come to blows and what they'd done. With every detail sounding real, he gave me a splitting headache. I had just one thought, no wonder he's a robot, he could invent such a flawless story. But I couldn't be bothered to call him out. Besides, Ethan Sterling sent him here. Might as well put him to work. I pointed to the tools and pigpen. Now that you're full, move these tools to the shed, then sweep out the pigpen, haul the manure to the field as fertilizer. Lucas blew up. You want the Black Wind Gang's young master doing this? I raised a brow. What else? I feed you and put you up, so what, should I wait on you? You don't expect a free ride, do you? As I spoke, I shoved a broom into his hands. Whether he liked it or not, I treated him as free labor Ethan had sent to make amends. Lucas chopped wood all afternoon. He collapsed onto the stone bench, too tired to move. He complained non-stop about the hard farm work and blazing sun. He said he'd never done such grueling work in his life. I ignored his complaints and set dinner on the table: brown rice, greens, and pickled radish. Though Lucas wasn't happy about it, he still wolfed down 2 bowls. The more he did that, the stranger his programming seemed. What AI complains about being tired and picky? As dusk settled, I watched Lucas, worried. After all, Ethan gave him to me as a gift. If he snuck off while I slept, Ethan might make me pay, and I couldn't afford that. After thinking it over, I decided he'd sleep with me in the guest room. There was only one bed. I kept my eyes on him. He definitely couldn't get away. When I told Lucas my decision, he exploded. He shot to his feet, his face turning bright red.
Are you insane? Men and women shouldn't share a room. How can I sleep in the same room as you?
Enough talk. I carried a blanket into the guest room. Sleep here, or don't sleep tonight. If you dare run, I'll call Ethan. I had Lucas right where I wanted him. He gritted his teeth in fury, but didn't dare argue. He slowly entered the guest room. While I turned to make the bed, he suddenly lunged for the door to escape. I reacted instantly. I raised my hand and slapped him. The sharp crack rang out. The room instantly fell silent. Lucas clutched his cheek, staring at me with wide eyes, his face filled with shock and disbelief. I coldly warned him not to try anything funny. He'd stay and help me finish the harvest. After that, he could go wherever he wanted. He stood frozen for a long while, then finally lay down stiffly, afraid to move an inch. He even quieted his breathing. Before long, it was harvest season. The rice in the fields gleamed gold, thick with the promise of a harvest. I took my sickle into the field and called Lucas over to help. But he stayed under a tree, looking disgusted as he said,
I don't do this kind of backbreaking work. It'll kill me.
I didn't force him. I simply kept harvesting, never once stopping my hands. I casually brought up how, when Ethan had amnesia, he could harvest so much in just half an hour. He worked fast and did it well, way better than you. That hit Lucas right in his pride. He shot to his feet and said through clenched teeth,
If he can do it, so can I, and I'll do it better.
I thought he was going to pitch in himself. Instead, he found a secluded spot and secretly made a phone call. It wasn't long before more than a dozen men in black came marching in. They carried harvesting tools, and moved impossibly fast. Before I could even react, the men charged into the rice paddy and cleared the entire field in no time. I was just about to thank them when my neighbor, Mrs. Watson, came running over. She pointed at her own field, stomping anxiously.
Chloe, did you hire people to harvest your rice? Why did they harvest mine, too?
I looked up and saw the neighboring field completely cleared. Lucas's men were carrying the rice into my yard. Before long, several neighbors had gathered around, all gossiping over the rice covering the ground. Their eyes were full of disbelief. I stood there awkwardly, staring at Lucas's smug face. I was furious and helplessly exasperated with him. He was fast when it came to work, but he had caused one huge mix-up. I hurriedly took Lucas from door to apologize and used our savings to cover Mrs. Watson's losses. Along the way, the neighbors gathered around us and gossiped. Before long, the conversation turned to Ethan. Mrs. Watson sighed and said,
Things were better when Ethan was around. He helped Chloe with the farm work, and often fixed our tools and built our greenhouses. Whenever anyone had a dispute, he was happy to mediate. Even the village kids loved him. He always knew how to make them smile.
Another neighbor chimed in.
Exactly. That guy was steady and hardworking, and he treated everyone with sincerity. He was far better than the one we have now. All this one does is throw his weight around and hire help, and he even messed up the rice harvest. All looks, no use.
Everyone chimed in, full of nostalgia for Ethan during his amnesia. Every word took a shot at Lucas's recklessness and incompetence. Lucas stood to one side, his face turning red, then pale. His fists were clenched tight, but he couldn't argue they were his mess to begin with. When we got home, he silently shoveled down his dinner. For once, he wasn't picky, and ate 3 bowls in one sitting. After setting down his bowl and chopsticks, he said through gritted teeth,
I'm going to outdo Ethan. From now on, I'll handle all the farm work. I'll do it better than he ever did, and make them all eat their words.
Watching him sulk, I couldn't help but laugh. The neighbors weren't really targeting him, it was just that Ethan's kindness during his amnesia had already won their hearts. I didn't say much. I just handed him some water. A promise is a promise. Get up early tomorrow and turn the soil. Don't even think about slacking off. Lucas lifted his chin and nodded. His eyes were full of determination not to lose. The fall harvest had just ended when an uninvited guest arrived, Ethan Sterling. He wore a perfectly tailored suit, standing at the farm's entrance, with his assistant behind him, oozing, "I'm rich" superiority. He claimed he was scouting nearby commercial land, but I could see right through him. He just couldn't let go, but was too proud to drop the CEO act, so he came back under a flimsy excuse to snoop. His eyes swept across the farm and finally settled on me. He asked in an even tone,
"That butler working out for you?"
I thought of Lucas, running around helping these past few days. I smiled and nodded. He's great at it. He's helped me a lot. He said nothing. His gaze passed over me and landed on the cottage we'd shared. His expression was complicated, and I couldn't tell what he was thinking. A breeze swept through, and a tiny bug flew into my eye. I rubbed it instinctively. My eye turned red at once. I was about to rinse it with clean water when I felt a burning gaze on me. I looked up and found Ethan staring at me, with an emotion I couldn't read in his eyes. It looked like concern or maybe guilt. But the next second, his face went cold again. A superior, pitying smile tugged at his lips, as if he were looking at some poor thing needing charity.
"If you run into trouble, you can contact me."
I let out a cold laugh inside. I shook my head. "No, thanks. I can handle things myself. My farm may be ordinary, but it's more than enough for me. So don't trouble yourself, Mr. Sterling." He froze for a moment, probably not expecting such a blunt refusal. A flash of surprise crossed his face. Sunlight fell across his face, leaving half of it bright and half in shadow, just like his conflicted mood. He had it coming. I paid him no further attention. I turned and walked inside and shut the door. I shut out the last bit of hope I had for him, too. He'd been able to walk away without a second thought, changing his attitude in the blink of an eye. What good was it for him to pretend to care now? What difference could it make? My farm, my life, I could live just fine without him. Better yet, life was more peaceful. I didn't have to let his emotions control me anymore. Ethan Sterling stood at the farm entrance, refusing to leave. He looked like he was nailed to the spot. Clearly, he wanted to see how miserable I was. I couldn't let that go. I grabbed his arm and led him into the yard. "Look, the fence is fixed. The vegetables have been replanted, too. They're growing even better than before." I pointed to the new bamboo fence and lush seedlings, deliberately showing off a little. Ethan Sterling glanced around, then gave a slight nod. His tone was flat.
"Looks good."
I wasn't satisfied, so I pulled him under the roof. Lucas was sitting in the bedroom, reading. Sunlight fell across his face, giving him a rather scholarly look. "That AI robot butler you sent is pretty smart. It can actually read. It knows more about farming than I do," I said with a laugh, completely missing the book cover in Lucas's hands. It read, "Gang Management Essentials." Ethan Sterling was just about to look inside when Sophia came rushing over, looking frantic.
Mr. Sterling, there's an urgent business matter at the office. They're pressuring us for an answer. You have to go back right now.
Ethan Sterling frowned. He only said calmly,
"As long as it's useful to you, I can send a few more later."
I quickly waved him off. No. One is enough. Lucas eats a ton. If you send a few more, I really couldn't keep them alive. Ethan Sterling nodded and turned to leave. I watched his back and pursed my lips. Of course. Business always comes first. With me, it's all just a waste of his precious time. After Ethan left, I was about to ask Lucas to feed the pigs when I saw him crouched in the corner of the storage room, flipping through an old book. I quietly walked over and realized he was holding Ethan's old book from when he had amnesia. Several books on running the farm and an appliance repair manual were piled beside it. There was even a book on 100 ways to calm kids. And at the very bottom was the ideal partner training guide. My heart suddenly ached. Those were all books Ethan had sought out and studied so he could share my life. He used to say he'd learn to run the farm properly, learn how to calm the neighbors' kids, and become a partner worthy of me. I gently closed the door and left Lucas alone. When I turned around, there was a package by the gate. It had been sent by Sophia, with a note attached. It said Ethan had sent an anti-theft device. But it was actually the AI robot butler's charger. I took the charger inside. Lucas had just closed his book. "Come here. Let me charge you up, or you'll run out of power and stop working." I grabbed his arm and started pulling off his clothes. He was a robot, so the charging port had to be somewhere on him. Lucas suddenly grabbed my hand. His face turned bright red.
"What are you doing?"
"Charging you. What if you can't move later?" I earnestly pulled my hand free. As we tugged at each other's shoulders, I accidentally brushed against Lucas's pants. Lucas instantly went rigid. The book in his hand fell to the floor. I stared at him for a long while before realizing, your manufacturer made you incredibly realistic. And quite detailed, too. Lucas said nothing. His ears burning red, he pulled up his pants.
I can charge myself. Go away.
I couldn't understand why a robot would get embarrassed, but then I thought about it. Technology has its own logic, so I didn't question it any further. I was sound asleep that night when I heard rustling in the yard. Thinking someone was stealing a pig, I grabbed the hoe and rushed outside. But when I looked up, I saw a man in black by the wall, watching Lucas do the laundry, his shoulders shaking. Lucas was scrubbing my jacket, his hands covered in suds. When I got closer, I realized it was his harvest helper from earlier, dressed all in black, with his hair a mess. He was biting his lip hard, silently crying. Lucas kept scrubbing the jacket, his brow furrowed, and grumbled.
Why is this so hard to wash? I never should have offered.
It was the jacket I'd mudded earlier. He'd insisted on washing it to prove he was more capable than Ethan.
The guy suddenly dropped to his knees.
And started wailing.
Young master, I failed you. You've endured such humiliation for revenge, doing laundry and grunt work here. I'll get you out of here now.
Lucas jumped in shock and dropped the jacket.
What the hell is wrong with you? Who's being humiliated?
But the guy was lost in his own fantasy and sobbed as he went on.
I get it. You want to stay with Miss Hayes and wait to get revenge on Ethan. I'll slip away now and stay out of your way.
Before Lucas could argue, the guy scrambled up and crept away, afraid someone might spot him. Lucas gritted his teeth and yelled after him.
Get back here. You left the gate open. What if someone steals the pigs?
I walked over and poked Lucas's arm. Your buddy sure loves the drama. He glared at me but said nothing, then went back to scrubbing. But his ears were bright red. The next morning I went to feed the pigs. I saw yesterday's henchman huddled by the pig pen, his eyes bloodshot. When he saw me, he rushed over and begged me through his tears.
Miss Hayes, please let our young master go. He's the young master of the Sinclair Blackwind gang. He's not your servant.
He kept rambling on. He went over Lucas's true identity again, then described the brutal infighting and said every faction was fighting for power. If Lucas didn't go back soon, he'd lose his position, and might even lose his life.
Miss Hayes, you're a good person, but you can't keep our young master from taking back control. His whole clan's fate rests on him.
The henchman sobbed his heart out, his plea seeming utterly sincere. I thought, oh, not this again. He'd even made it sound convincing. So Lucas's robot programming was to play the Black Wind Gang's young master. I pulled my arm free and brushed him off. If he wants to leave, let him. I never stopped him. The henchman thought I was refusing, and started sobbing even harder. He spun a wildly dramatic tale of the gang's brutal infighting. The more I heard, the more annoyed I got. So Lucas wanted to leave but was too embarrassed, and sent a henchman to stage this sob story. He'd complained about the farm work and tried sneaking off several times, but I had something on him. But seeing the henchman's red, tearful eyes made me think of how Lucas had acted tough, yet still done a lot of work for me. My heart softened. I found Lucas and got straight to the point. Your henchman came to me. He says you're going back to seize power. I'll let you go. Go with him to town and take care of things. Lucas froze for a moment. He clearly hadn't expected me to agree so readily. He opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but only managed to say one thing.
I'll be back soon.
I waved him off. I sneered inwardly, if you're leaving, then leave. Why pretend you can't bear to go? When Lucas left, dawn was breaking. He didn't wake me, leaving only a note saying he'd return soon. I ran the farm as usual, chopping wood and feeding pigs. At dinner, I served an extra bowl on his favorite stone bench, waiting for him. 1 day, 2, 3 passed. Lucas still wasn't back. The rice went from warm to cold, then into the pig trough. Over and over it went. I was disappointed, sure, but I didn't dwell on it. He was just a robot sent by Ethan. They're all the same, they never belonged here. On the 3rd night, I heard noises outside and went out with a hoe. A wolf was circling the pig pen, targeting a piglet. Gathering my courage, I faced it with my hoe. Though terrified, I gritted my teeth and chased it off. Seeing the pig safe, I suddenly realized, with or without Ethan, with or without Lucas, it was all the same. I can fix fences and farm alone, and protect my farm and pigs. I put away the hoe, went inside, packed up Lucas's bowl, and hid it in the cabinet. From then on, I went back to a solo life, working from dawn until dusk, focusing entirely on the farm. All feelings about them settled deep in my heart, leaving no ripples. Before long, the rainy season hit. It rained heavily for days. The sky grew ominously dark. That night, the rain only got worse, with thunder rolling. I was just about to sleep when a deafening landslide sounded in the distance. My heart lurched. I grabbed a gong and ran into the rain, banging it to wake the neighbors. Get up, there's been a landslide. Move to safety, now. The neighbors woke up and scrambled outside with their belongings. I followed the crowd towards safety. safety. Halfway there, I remembered Daisy in the pig pen. Ethan gave me that pig when he had amnesia. She was my only keepsake of our 3 years together. I gritted my teeth and ran against the crowd back to the farm, ignoring the neighbors' warnings. I only wanted to save Daisy. The moment I rushed into the pig pen, a huge crash thundered overhead. Several rocks slammed down beside the pen and blocked the exit. I held the pig and curled up in the corner. Rainwater streamed in through the cracks, soaking my clothes. I heard rescuers shouting in the distance. I could barely make out Ethan's silhouette. He was wearing a raincoat, leading the developers and rescuers in coordinating the response. His expression was grim, and he was swamped with work. He didn't even notice me trapped in the pig pen. I huddled in the corner with the piglet, watching mud and rocks keep falling. This was bad. I might be buried here. Just when I thought I'd be buried alive, a familiar figure rushed in. It was Lucas. He pulled me and the piglet into his arms and charged through the falling rocks.
Are you crazy? The whole mountain slid, and you came back for a pig?
His shout was edged with fear. I froze for a moment. I never thought he'd really come back. Only after we got out did I realize Lucas had brought a whole crowd, along with excavators and rescue crews. They were clearing the rocks and repairing the farm. He pulled me to safety and asked grimly,
Are you still waiting for Ethan? He doesn't have time to care about you.
I was about to argue when I spotted Ethan nearby, staring toward my farm. His eyes were filled with disbelief, but people crowded around him, so he forced himself to look away and kept directing the rescue. Lucas took my hand and led me away for the time being. He kept muttering about fixing up the farm. I watched his tense profile. My heart twisted a little. So this robot has a warmer heart than a real person. Later, Lucas took me back to the Shore estate. In front of that sea of gang members, I finally realized he truly was the Black Wind Gang's heir. I was terrified, sure Lucas was going to have me torn limb from limb, but he just stared me down. With everyone watching, he leaned in and kissed me. He said, "You're Black Wind's young mistress now." Later, I heard that Ethan was blamed by his family for acting rashly during a rescue, trying to go in alone to save someone in a farmer's home. They said he couldn't see the big picture and wasn't up to the job. I didn't pay much attention. It was his family business, nothing to do with me. In the end, I went back to the farm. Once the farm was more or less cleaned up, Lucas and I discussed picking a date for a simple engagement party. We'd live a quiet life. I had someone deliver an invitation to Ethan. I thought it was time to put it all to rest. After Ethan received the invitation, he was completely stunned. Only then did he send people to investigate. He finally uncovered the truth. A mistake by his men had them mistake the captive Lucas for an AI robot butler and put him in the suitcase meant for me. He'd always thought the machine beside me was just a machine, but it was actually his business rival. And that rival and I had gotten as far as an engagement. When Ethan learned the truth, he defied his family's opposition. He broke out despite being confined and drove straight to my farm. The feelings he'd deliberately ignored came flooding back the moment he learned the truth. But Ethan never made it to the farm. I heard he crashed halfway there. They say the Sinclair clan's enemies set him up to frame Lucas. After Ethan was taken to the hospital, he was unconscious for an entire day. When he woke up, he'd lost his memory. When he came to, I was the first person he saw. He immediately grabbed my hand, his eyes full of trust.
Chloe. My head is killing me. Let's go home.
He only remembered the 3 years we spent together at the farm, not that he was CEO of Sterling Corp, or his feud with Lucas, and certainly not the separation agreement. I was completely stunned. How did this guy lose his memory again? So I had no choice but to bring him back to the farm. Just like the last time he had amnesia, he clung to me and refused to leave. He fed the pigs, chopped wood, and worked the farm. He was ridiculously good at it. Then he saw Lucas's luxury car parked by the gate. He frowned and said,
"What is this piece of junk? It's taking up space."
He was about to smash the luxury car, so I hurried to stop him. Lucas stood off to the side, his face dark with anger, but he didn't say a word. He just stared at Ethan, his expression impossible to read. After Ethan lost his memory, he was that farm boy again, always at my side. He worked hard and always tried to cheer me up. But he hated Lucas and fought him at every turn. One morning, I hung the clean laundry in the yard. When Ethan saw Lucas's clothes next to mine, his eyes instantly went red. While I turned to feed the pig, he secretly grabbed some scissors and cut up all of Lucas's clothes. When Lucas found out, he was so mad he tried to fight Ethan. But I stopped him. Fed up, I got our old separation agreement and handed it to Ethan. "Ethan, look at this. We're already broken up. You can't keep acting like a child." Ethan took the agreement, glanced at it, then tossed it into a basin on purpose. The ink got wet and blurred. He scratched his head, then suddenly clutched it and frowned.
My head hurts. Chloe. It hurts.
I knew he was faking it to avoid our breakup. I was mad but helpless. Lucas stood nearby and scoffed.
Cut the act. Fight me fair and square.
But Ethan hid behind me.
He clutched the hem of my shirt, like a wounded child.
Chloe, he's mean to me.
I looked at those two mortal enemies and got a headache. I had no idea how to end this. Although Lucas stopped going after Ethan, he offered to take care of him. I thought he'd finally come to his senses, but he had an ulterior motive. At dinner, I noticed Ethan took 2 bites, then kept drinking water. His lips were bright red. It wasn't until I leaned closer that I realized his bowl was loaded with chopped chili peppers. Ethan used to have zero tolerance for spicy food. And it wasn't just the food. Lucas deliberately made Ethan do heavy labor, hauling bags of fertilizer weighing dozens of pounds to the fields, even though he knew Ethan's arm was injured. When I found them, Ethan was crouched on the ground, clutching his arm and gasping. His face was pale. Furious, I immediately kicked Lucas out of the room, then came back with ointment to treat Ethan's injury. When the ointment touched the wound, Ethan hissed in pain, then suddenly grabbed my hand and gave it a childish little shake.
Chloe, kiss me, and it'll stop hurting.
My hand froze. I remembered how cold Ethan had been when he regained his memory. In a calm but firm voice, I shot back. We're already broken up. Don't do this anymore. His hand suddenly tightened, the hurt in his eyes faded, leaving only silence. From then on, Ethan and Lucas started competing, trying to win me over with chores. Ethan got up early to feed my pig, so Lucas hauled water at midnight. Ethan picked fresh greens for me, so Lucas went into town for my favorite pastries. But the craziest part was, they actually started competing over their scars. Ethan showed off the scar on his arm from a car crash and a business rivalry. Lucas bared the scar on his chest from a gang shootout. Neither would back down. I was getting a headache just watching them when 2 groups suddenly showed up at the farm. The Sterling family elders were on one side, and the Shaw gang's men were on the other. The tension flared the moment they met. One of the Sterling elders berated Ethan.
How long are you going to keep pretending? The family's affairs are nearly in chaos.
My heart skipped a beat. I turned to look at Ethan. All the childishness had vanished from his face. His eyes were perfectly clear. He'd actually recovered some of his memories. He'd been pretending to have amnesia to stay with me. Lucas realized it, too. His face turned frighteningly dark. He glared at Ethan with a cold sneer.
Mr. Sterling, quite the performance. You had us all fooled.
Ethan ignored him and simply looked at me. His expression was complicated. I pursed my lips, feeling both annoyed and amused. Ethan went to deal with the family elders. I met with his assistant, Sophia, alone. Sophia was hostile at first. She sharply accused me of colluding with Lucas and delaying Ethan's family business. She even said I clung to Ethan for his money. I didn't defend myself. I simply told her how, after Ethan's first bout of amnesia, I dodged a gang hit and dragged him to the hospital in the rain to save him, while losing an arm myself. Sophia's expression slowly changed. Her eyes filled with remorse. She took a tube of scar cream from her bag, handed it to me, and said,
Mr. Sterling was punished by his family twice to protect you. Both times, he chose to stay with you at the farm, accepting house arrest and losing his power. He specifically asked me to buy this scar cream. He said you used to worry about scarring.
I took the cream. My fingertips trembled slightly. After a moment of silence, I said, I'll keep it, but as for him and me, we settled our debts a long time ago. When I returned to the farm, Ethan and Lucas were still arguing over who would dry my rice. I went into the kitchen, poured 2 cups of warm water, then walked over to Ethan and handed him one. I put on a stern face and said it contained medicine to restore his memory. Drink it, and you'll remember your identity and responsibilities. Stop squatting here. Ethan took the cup but didn't drink right away. He just stared at me in silence. His eyes held a complicated mix of emotions, reluctance, and guilt, along with a trace of resentment. He stayed silent for a long time, so long that even Lucas stopped arguing. He just watched us. Finally, he tipped his head back and drained the cup, then set it down. The air around him instantly turned cold. He was the cold Sterling Corp CEO again.
I understand.
That was all he said before turning toward the gate. He never looked back. His back was ramrod straight, just like it had been when he left before. Lucas leaned toward me and whispered,
Did you really put medicine in it?
I shook my head and smiled. I was only bluffing. He already knew what he had to do. Some things are best left unsaid. Ethan had just reached the gate when Daisy suddenly ran over and clamped onto his pant leg, refusing to let go. Daisy was a gift he gave me when he'd lost his memory. She's been by my side all these years. I walked over and gently pried open the pig's mouth. I told Ethan, you can have her. She recognizes you, so stop using excuses to bother Lucas and me. Ethan lowered his head and looked at the pig, then glanced at me. A trace of relief flashed in his eyes and he nodded.
Okay.
He bent down and picked up the pig gently, as if he were holding on to some cherished hope. Seeing this, Lucas hurried over and locked the farm gate with a click. He even reinforced the bolt. He shouted through the gate, Don't come back. You're not welcome here. Ethan didn't look back and slowly disappeared at the village entrance, pig in his arms. Later, Sophia told me Ethan kept Daisy on Sterling Corp's top floor. He even hired someone to care for her. He'd claim Daisy was out of feed or sick, just to message me. I always gave him a brief reply. I urged him to focus on business and stop getting distracted by little things. Before long, Ethan stopped messaging me. A few years later, Sophia told me Daisy had passed away peacefully. Ethan gave her a little gravestone. It rained hard that day. He stood alone before her grave and had a good cry. It was how he finally let go of the past. When I heard, I felt nothing. I just said, I see. Those youthful entanglements and regrets had faded with time. After all, we both had our own lives to live. Decades flew by. Lucas and I stayed on this farm, living quiet, peaceful lives. Lucas still couldn't let go of his competitive streak. He often competed with the neighbors to see whose greens grew the tenderest. In fall, it was who harvested the most rice. When he lost, he'd study fertilizers and farming techniques until he won next time. But he always put me first. He knew I tired easily, so he never let me do heavy work. He knew I had a sweet tooth, so every year, he planted sugarcane and strawberries. When I got up at night, he'd always wake up and walk with me, afraid I'd trip over a rock in the yard. He kept the farm running like clockwork. Chickens and ducks everywhere, rice paddies stretching for miles. Every corner felt warm and lived in. The neighbors often said Lucas had changed. He used to be a fearsome gang heir, but now he was a farmhand devoted to the farm and me. He'd always laugh and argue back, saying I was where he truly belonged. That afternoon, I napped in the shade by the rice fields. When I woke, Lucas was beside me, gently fanning me. Claire had come to see me, smiling as she said,
Miss Hayes, you really are blessed. Lucas made peace with the Sterlings just to stay by your side. He even turned the Sinclair clan's gang operations into an agricultural cooperative, helping local farmers earn a living.
I froze. I turned to Lucas. He scratched his head, smiling sheepishly.
I used to think about fighting for power. Then I realized nothing felt more right than life with you at the farm. Turning it into a cooperative got me out of the gang and protected the local farmers. And I get to stay with you, 3 birds with 1 stone.
The breeze rippled through the rice, carrying a sweet fragrance. I leaned against Lucas's shoulder, watching the golden fields before us and the farmers working in the distance. We exchanged a smile. The struggles of the past had finally ended. For the rest of our lives, we'd stay together on this warm, bustling farm, growing old side by side.